All right, Alyssa, it's time for our second kind of Zoom call talking about organizing. Today we get to talk about a subject that I know you're super excited about and I'm super excited about, design trends for your home in 2020, kind of what's going on. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yes, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think it's just so fun to every year find out what's going to be big this year, what might be some ongoing trends that we've been seeing in the past few years that are even bigger this year. So it's always fun to keep up on those topics.
Yeah.
But today we're going to kind of dive in and talk about my top 10 trends that I find that are very livable, that we can really see in our own homes, and not just on pages of um, designer magazines and things like
Yes.
that. Things that we can really easily incorporate into our home and know that we don't have to change out everything in order for our home to be on trend.
I love
Um,
that. I love that because sometimes we look at these like beautiful images in magazines and think, oh my gosh, my house will never look like that because I actually live in my home, right? Or I
yes,
have
yes,
kids in my home or whatever, you know. So I am so
exactly.
excited. Well, before you jump in, Alyssa, I just
Sure.
want to give everybody who is either watching and listening or will watch and listen to this call later on, just kind of a little bit of background on who you are in case they weren't with us last time, and kind of
Sure.
what your specialties are. So do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
I would love to. Thanks, Janine. So my name is Alissa O'Brien. I am a certified home stager and interior stylist. I specialize in occupied home staging consultations, which means that when you're getting your home ready for the resale market and you're going to be living in your home, I will come in and help you give you ideas on how we can really make your space appeal to the most potential buyers. And we often utilize things that you already have in order to inspire those buyers. And then I also have been a color consultant and interior stylist since 2003. So I love if you just need help putting together a new color palette for your home, whether it's one room or a whole house, I can always do that too.
I love that. And I just want to give you a shout out, Alyssa, because we love working with you. And we will, when we take a new listing and work with someone to sell their home, you're one of the first people that we will have come into the home. And as you said, really help our sellers get their home ready to go on the market. And you really go room by room. You're really helpful. You're great at using things that they have in their home, and kind of repositioning them sometimes and just making the best. And I always tell my clients, really, we're just wanting to show off all the beautiful features of your home. And honestly, Alyssa, you truly have a gift,
Oh,
and
thanks.
we genuinely love working with you. So I cannot say enough about what you do, and you are talented for sure. So
Thank you, Janine. And I
you're
feel the same
welcome.
way about you and your team. It's such a wonderful partnership, and
Oh,
I
thank you.
enjoy it so, so much. And it's amazing when I do a consult with the homeowner, how after I leave, it's amazing how now they see their house in a whole new light.
Mhm.
But when you're living in your home and you're surrounded by all your things, sometimes you overlook things. And so from a fresh perspective, it's always nice for me to come in and help you see your home in a slightly different way.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you are wonderful. We love you, Alyssa, and it's
Thanks,
yours
Jenny.
to take away. So.
Okay. So, as we talk about home trends, um, I know it's people always wonder, well, where do home trends come about? And we oftentimes again, we're looking in magazines. We kind of want to think about design trends kind of the same way as we look at fashion trends. Not every single fashion trend, I know for a fact that um, I can't take on every fashion trend that comes out. And we kind of want to look at our house in the same way. Will this new trend or will this ongoing trend that we've seen in the past few years, will that work in my home? And what we don't want to do is we want to kind of consider not seeing when we talk about home trends, we don't want to say, oh gosh, in order for my house to be on trend, I have to totally redo my space. And really, we want to make timeless rooms. We want to be able to create a space that we're not having to change out every couple years because we were so specific on what we brought in. We want to bring in trends in small ways, but yet we want the space to feel very timeless. And before we even jump into trends, I know often we hear the word trend and fad, and sometimes people interchange these words. And when people say, oh, that trend, that's gonna come and go really, really fast, where actually fads are what usually come on very, very quickly and then disappear probably just as quick. They're usually around maybe a year and a half at most, and then they kind of fade away. Whereas a trend usually gradually comes on very slowly and stays around for actually quite a long period of time. Usually we see trends come and go it's like a 10-year cycle that we see trends come and go. And so there's a much slower rise when a trend comes about, and they usually gain in popularity over those years, and they sometimes stay around for a long time and even sometimes a permanent time. So just some examples of a fad versus a trend in the design world. So we used to see, like in the 70s, shag carpet, wall-to-wall shag carpet. We will probably never see that fad again. And same thing with tile countertops. They were around kind of in the 80s, and then I haven't seen them since that time either. So those are kind of considered a fad. When we walked into Home Goods and we saw that chevron zigzag pattern everywhere. Mm-hmm. Not to say that you can't have a chevron in your home still, but we're not going into stores and seeing that. That's not the first thing that we see. Same thing with futons and that typography artwork that said, keep calm, carry on. Those things that were around in every store that we went into, and now we kind of don't see that anymore. Mm-hmm. Whereas when we talk about a trend, for example, the color gray. The color gray has been increasingly becoming more popular over the last 10 years. In 2010, I think we saw a really big hit of the color gray, and everybody went gray. And we're still seeing homes being painted in grays. We're seeing a slight shift, instead of the really stark grays, going to more of the warmer grays. White kitchens, again in 2010, all white kitchens were such a big hot topic. And that has still lasted over the last 10 years. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing in kitchens now. But same thing with quartz countertops, those mid-century modern interiors and furniture styles, that modern farmhouse design that Chip and Joanna Gaines made super popular when their show took off. Again, it's been about 10 years. So we're still seeing those trends in the last couple of years have grown, and they're still going strong. And so that's why we consider those trends, because they're still really popular and they're still kind of a classic style. Mm-hmm. So as we move into trends, I'm going to be talking about 10 of my favorite, and I think what are really popular, and I think what we're going to see a lot when we can get back to shopping in stores, or if we're shopping online, we might see a lot of this too. So it's always good to talk about colors of the year. Every year, paint companies come out with what they think will be the trending color or a trending palette. And these are kind of the top 4 that we are seeing everywhere. Sherwin-Williams, their color of the year that they came out with is called Naval. And it's kind of hard to see, but my office is actually painted in that color. However, even though it's trending this year, I have been speccing this paint color for years. It is one of the best, prettiest navies I have seen in a paint palette, and I will always keep recommending it. Navy is a timeless color, but we're just gonna see it a lot more. We're gonna see it on fashion runways. We're gonna see it in the automotive and the electronic industries. A lot of these colors that you see on the screen, we're gonna see all over the place.
I see a lot, Alyssa, of that navy color on islands. Like people are painting their kitchen cabinets and they're doing their islands. So it's like the tuxedo, I think they call
Yes,
it.
yes, very good.
Mhm.
Yes.
I'm seeing that a lot on the islands is that navy color and it's so pretty.
Isn't it so pretty? And it's so funny. My next slide shows it on an island. So yes, you're right. You're so good. But yes, and it is amazing how we're bringing in these pops of colors back to our kitchens. And yes, these work so well. And I'm also going to be talking about how can we incorporate each trend into our home really easily. And so again, Benjamin Moore picked a really pretty blush color. Blush is going to be huge again. It was big. It was gaining a lot of momentum last year too, and it's back. And Bear picked a really pretty color called Back to Nature. Very pretty organic green. We're kind of bringing the outdoors back in. And then PPG Paints picked Chinese porcelain, which is kind of a mix between a true cobalt, brighter blue, and a deep navy. It's kind of more of a moodier blue, just a little bit brighter than a true navy. But how can we use these colors in our home? And a lot of people think, well, it's a paint color. I guess I just have to paint my wall with it. And what we want to do is we kind of want to think out of the box. Paint colors and color trends, we don't necessarily have to use them on the wall. And like Janine mentioned, that navy, we're seeing it so much more in kitchens, kitchen design. We're seeing color pops on the cabinets. We're steering away from the all white kitchen and really seeing kitchens come back to life, have a little bit more warmth to them with that pop of color. And it is called a tuxedo kitchen when we take that color onto the island, and then maybe having a surrounding color in a different shade or in the white cabinets. But think about bringing in those shades of colors through a pillow or a throw blanket. You don't necessarily have to have it as a wall. And I love how the idea, if you have a unused piece of furniture that's in your garage and you're not sure what to do with it, maybe give it a fresh coat of paint in one of the trendy colors. And even with pottery, think about that blue and white pottery has been around for such a long time. It's a timeless color scheme. And so even again, just bringing in that blue and white pottery, so simple to do. And then besides those four colors, those main colors that we talked about, we also want to incorporate other trending, a whole scheme of colors. So besides the navies, again, the color schemes this year are really going back to nature. How can we really bring the outdoors in? How can we really make our homes feel cozy and inviting? And so we're gonna see a lot of the rich olive greens, different shades of greens, but a lot of those deep greens and those terracottas. Terracotta, whether it's in pottery or again in a paint color, we're seeing in textiles, such a pretty warm, inviting color. Again, mixed with the blushes and things like that. And just as we see them in a room space, again, they bring in so many rich textures, whether it's on your wall, just as an accent wall, in your pillows, in your area rugs. We're gonna actually also see a lot of lighter wood tones coming back on trend too. From like, we're seeing all the way from the really light wood tones that look like they don't have any stain on them to kind of more the richer walnuts. But it creates it's a very pretty balance with these terracottas and these blues and the olive greens.
I love the idea of changing out your throw pillows. And I'll do stuff where I'll just order like a cover online, like on Amazon or something, because then you can just a little bit less expensive, but still use the same pillow. And it totally updates your space. It's really fun.
Such a good point. It is and that's actually one of my biggest recommendations when if you're listing your home and you want to refreshen a space, is if you have maybe a dated sofa or a really dark sofa and just want to totally change the look of your room, is adding new pillows. It is amazing what a new textile will do. Great point. Okay, and then our second design trend that I think we're gonna see a lot of, and which is a very pretty detail. It's called cane detailing, and it's seen on the front of this cabinet, and it is something we see on chairs. We usually see it on chairs, but we're seeing it more on furniture pieces, on headboards and footboards, and it's such a pretty detail. It makes a piece of furniture feel very light and airy because it's transparent, we can see through it. So if you're wanting to keep your room feeling nice and light and bright and not want to make it feel darker and heavy, caning is a great detail to add to a space. And again, we're going to see, besides the cane detailing, we're also going to be bringing in a lot of natural fibers. And this trend has been going on for a long time too, but we're seeing more and more of it, whether it's hanging baskets on the wall. I know when I was growing up, my mom had a wall of baskets, and it's amazing how this trend of hanging baskets back up on the wall is hip again. So yeah, I love it. I love how we can bring that warmth to the wall. We're also going to see a lot of the rattan detailing. So the rattan is this side table right here where, again, it feels very open, but yet adding these natural textures will instantly add warmth to a space. And the hanging, the natural woven light fixtures. That's another big thing we're seeing in kitchen pendants, in dining room pendants. And it's, again, such a pretty detail. And here it is again. We have the cane back seats. We have the natural woven light fixture. We have a really pretty basket just sitting by the sofa. And then ways we can utilize this trend in our home. Again, you don't have to go out and buy a caned back sofa, but just, again, bringing in a simple pair of baskets, bringing in an end table that has the rattan detailing, changing out your lampshade. I have done this. I think that is, besides my pillows, I think changing out my lampshades is another thing that really can instantly update a space. And bringing in those natural fibers it's such an easy way to do it. And we're seeing the bottom right-hand corner, we're seeing mirrors that have the natural cane detailing. So easy ways we can add this trend into our home without totally redecorating. Okay, and then moving on to our third trend, we're going to talk about curved shapes. So this was actually a big trend last year too, but again, it's gaining a little bit more momentum. We are moving towards rooms and spaces that are looking a little less harsh. So if you walk into your room and you're like, oh my gosh, I think every single piece of furniture I own has a hard edge. This trend is actually really easy to incorporate into your home. Whether if you are in need of a new sofa, maybe you look for sofas that have a little bit more of the rounded corners. Even adding these, like a little simple poof as a little extra seating in your living room or family room. Adding in a circular coffee table. Always a really easy way to bring in a curved shape. Again, we're going to see a lot of more of the curved sofas, the curved back chairs. A lot of times we're gonna see floor lamps that have those big kind of the cantilever arms that are kind of reaching over the sofas. We're seeing dining tables with these pretty, people are bringing in the circular dining tables and the curved chairs to kind of hug the table edge. So it's just such a pretty detail. And easy ways we can bring this trend into our home. Again, it can be as simple as bringing in a piece of pottery to your home. If you're looking around and maybe your bedroom was a bedroom set where the headboard and bedside tables, the dresser, they are all matchy, and maybe we want to add in a little bit of softness, we can bring in maybe a curved headboard. Change out your headboard, maybe add in a mirror with an arch or a circular mirror. Even adding, besides new lampshades, even adding like these vessel-based lamps. So that's we're gonna see kind of lamps looking more like pottery too. So bringing in those soft curves is actually a very easy trend to bring into your home. Okay, and then number 4 is wallpaper. So wallpaper, I mean, we think of wallpaper, we think every single wall. I kind of think back to when my grandma's house where she had this floral guest room where every single wall was wallpapered. She had the matching window valance and the matching bedspread and everything was the same. And so we don't really want to, wallpaper is not like that anymore. And so we're really seeing wallpaper as an accent and as just kind of a backdrop to certain spaces. So we're seeing wallpaper as kitchen backsplashes. A lot of times they are coated in a vinyl surface, so they are easier to clean. We are seeing a trend of larger floral prints, which are kind of in a muted tone though. But these larger prints, don't be afraid to, if you have a powder room, I think it's such an amazing pattern to put into a powder room, especially when you have maybe some wood paneling below that you're not really doing the entire space like floor to ceiling, but it's just the upper half. It's a really, really pretty accent.
I have a question, Alissa.
Sure.
So I've had this asked of me before, and I don't know the answer to it, so I'm hoping you do. I'm sure you do. Obviously here in Arizona, textured walls is really popular.
Yes.
How does wallpaper do on those textured walls?
Surprisingly, it works really, really well. There's 2 main types of texture usually found in Arizona. It's the orange peel, which is like the really tight texture that you see. Usually it's found in older homes, like before, like in the 80s, 90s, we found that orange peel texture. In early 2000s and maybe in the late 90s. And then as we got into the 2000s, we have a skip trowel, which is in my home where it's a texture, but it's a little bit more smooth, a little bit more spaced out. But wallpaper actually works really well. Wallpaper tends to be a little bit thicker than most people realize. And you might see every now and then a little bump here or there. They do make wallpaper liner. So if you, for some reason, have a really textured wall, and maybe you put up a sheet and you see, gosh, I can really see that texture come through, there's always liner paper that you can install first. But it actually adheres really well. A lot of times we have wallpaper that, my next couple slides, it's actually peel and stick, where it's not a permanent thing. So maybe you kind of want to get the feel, do I want to add wallpaper to my house? This is a great way to add the wallpaper, is the peel and stick. And most wallpaper companies have the traditional wallpaper where it's called pre-pasted, where you activate the paste with dipping it in water and then adhering it to the wall. Or they have the peel and stick, which just has a backing that you peel off and you hang. And so this is another great way if you are renting a home. This is a great way to change a space just by adding that peel and stick. And then if you ever need to move out, you can easily take it down and it doesn't do damage to the wall.
And most people, Alissa, right, are doing, I mean, I don't know, I should ask, are doing like I think you may have even said this, kind of more focal point walls, or not doing like an entire room in wallpaper, right?
Yes, good question. Yes, it is mostly focal walls. So for example, in this picture, it's the wall behind the bed. It's just, we want to kind of, if we have an area that we want to draw your eye to, it's a great space to put some wallpaper. Or if wallpaper is not your thing, it could be just a solid color, like a paint color that we put up. But again, in smaller spaces like what we had in the powder room, those areas I think are just so fun. If you wanted to do a whole the whole room, I think that's great. Or maybe it's just the wall behind the toilet and the mirror. So again, it doesn't have to be the whole space, but yeah, we're mainly seeing in larger rooms, just one wall. And then how can we utilize this trend in our home? If you happen to have, these are actually all peel and stick versions that I have shown. If you happen to have an entryway wall, this is a great space to add a little pop of color or pattern. If you have a long hallway, maybe, and at the very end of the hall, you're like, what do I do with this skinny wall? This is a great space for, again, a pop of color, a little texture. If you happen to have wooden stairs where we have the riser of the stair in a slick surface, you can always cut and do a really fun pattern where it looks like tile. I think that's such a fun way to add wallpaper. And if you don't even want to put wallpaper on your walls, maybe think about if you have a plain bookcase or a china hutch that you want to kind of update. This is a great way to bring in that wallpaper trend.
I love it.
All right. And then we're going to kind of move into, this is number 5. Our number 5 trend is the non-white kitchen. So I think white kitchens, like the white on white, where we have white cabinets, white countertops, we're kind of seeing that go away. I don't think we'll ever see white cabinets go off trend. I think that is a timeless cabinet color. But what we are seeing, and last year too, we saw this a little bit, but we're seeing this even more, is bringing color to our cabinetry. We're seeing these really rich tones being painted on cabinets. We call it a color pop. We're seeing the whites on the cabinets are actually kind of leaning towards the softer shades. This is actually, on this cabinet, this is a really pretty putty color, where it's kind of like a warmer gray, and it's not a pure white. The backsplash on this in this kitchen is kind of a softer cream. So we're kind of just warming things up as we think about kitchen trends. We're also going to see a lot of wood tones come back into the kitchen, where we kind of got rid of the wood tones, wood cabinets, things like that. We're kind of seeing those come back in, whether it's in a floating shelf. We're seeing the butcher block countertops come back into style. If it's just on an island, we are seeing, again, these rich, I think the olive greens are such a pretty color in kitchens, especially if you pair it with those, just those nice natural wooden tones, whether it's in a cutting board that you lay on your counter, or your knife block, or maybe you have the kitchen table in your kitchen too. It just plays, those colors play very, very well together. And this is kind of what I was referring to also. Again, that natural lighter wood tone is really coming back. And again, we have the two-toned kitchen where we have the island color separate from the surrounding cabinets. Sometimes we just see the island in the color, and that's what we were referring to as the tuxedo kitchen, where the island is just a totally different material or color than the rest of the kitchen. But I just think those warmer tones just add so much life to your kitchen. I think it's such a pretty, pretty trend. And we're also seeing a huge trend in black kitchens. So it's a very striking color combination. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later too. But this is another big, big trend that we're seeing. We were seeing this a lot actually last year just in kitchen islands, but now that the black is actually being put into the surrounding cabinets also. But again, such a pretty way to update your kitchen. especially, again, I think it's always important to kind of bring in those balances. When we go really light and dark, we need to bring in some mid-tone, like those nice wood tones to kind of help balance everything. And then, so how can we use, if we have a all white kitchen, how might we be able to utilize this trend in our home? So easy ways we can do that. If you don't even want to think about paint, if you want to add some warmth, probably one of the easiest things to do is add new bar stools. If you happen to have a kitchen island, adding in a natural wood stool, I think that would be such a pretty way to bring warmth back into your kitchen. Again, adding pretty cutting boards that are leaning against your backsplash, bringing in those woven pendant lights over your kitchen island, such a pretty way to kind of warm up the space. We can also think about changing out our cabinet hardware. Again, if we want to kind of change the look of our kitchen, I think one of the easiest ways to do that is if you don't have hardware already, add some in. Or if you just painted your cabinets recently to white and maybe you have a brushed nickel pull, maybe opt for a matte black or an aged bronze that would really stand out against the cabinet color. But then we also see in these other pictures that dark green, painting your kitchen island, easy way to kind of bring in some color back into the kitchen.
I love that.
All right.
And kitchens are such a, I mean, obviously for selling a home, it's one of the most important rooms, right?
Yeah.
It's such a used space in the home. And I think updating a kitchen or focusing on a kitchen can just be, it can have like a huge impact on just how you feel about your home, you know?
It's so true. I think we spend so much time in our kitchen, and I think if we're selling our home or just we're living in our home, we spend so much time in the kitchen. If we have a party gathering, people tend to gather in the kitchen. So we want the space to feel inviting. We want to make it feel updated, yet timeless. And I think there's, again, easy ways to do that. But yeah, yes, I agree.
Very pretty.
All right, and then we move on to mixing metals. This is number 6. So this trend again has kind of been ongoing over the years where we're seeing different finishes in the same space. And I think the first rule of thumb, we kind of think about mixing metals, especially in kitchen spaces. A lot of people think, oh gosh, I have stainless steel appliances. I have to use brushed nickel hardware. Like we do, and I want people to know you don't have to do that. We don't have to match our finishes to our appliances. The biggest rule I would say is don't go over 3 finishes. We want to, if we go beyond 3 in one space, it tends to get a little too busy. So for example, in this kitchen, we do kind of count, I will say, we kind of count the appliance as a finish. So just keep that in mind. So we have stainless steel in this kitchen. We have the brass hardware on the cabinets, and then we have a matte black shelf bracket and the matte black faucet. So that they go so well together. And the reason why this works is black actually goes with everything. So if you're struggling on figuring out, well, what metal should I use in my kitchen, you can never go wrong with black. Anytime you have, and this works in any room, if you're looking for kind of an accent color to kind of break up a space, it's kind of nice to bring in a black finish. It kind of gives your place an eye to rest when you're looking around the room. So we have the black pendants actually over the island too. And when we also have these warmer wood tones in the floor, which actually mimics the warm tones in the gold finish and then the warm tones in the shelving above. So it just kind of brings the whole space together. And then you don't really notice the stainless steel. It kind of just fades into the background. And And this also works beyond kitchens. When we're thinking about our living room spaces, again, this room actually has 3 different finishes also. We see it in the gold light fixture. We see it in the glow of we have gold orbs over here. It's hard to tell maybe by the picture, but these are brushed nickel cabinet pulls. And then we have the black light fixtures above. And we also have a matte black furniture bases, and we have dining room chairs. And the arm of the floor lamp is also black. So the reason why this is all working well together is again, we kind of think of undertones and metal finishes. The black, again, goes with everything. And it kind of, even in the black in the back of this piece of artwork, our eye kind of automatically goes to those areas first. We have the black in the TV too, and we have the black chair in the foreground. But it just helps to balance everything. And when we bring in the gold, we see the warmer tones of the wood in the fireplace mantle, and then we see the warmer tones in the floor. So that way we know we can bring in those warmer metal finishes in our shelf decor, and then again in our lamp. And so again, we have the 3 finishes, and then the brushed nickel on the cabinets here really help to tie in those cooler gray tones in the fireplace stone. So we have the 3 and they go so well together.
I love that. You know, I have seen it happen so many times where you can take a space that maybe feels kind of dated, and just by how you accessorize, it can really update it. It's amazing.
Isn't that, it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true. And sometimes I tell people, maybe you have some built-in bookshelves or freestanding bookshelves. And I always say, take everything out, mm-hmm. and then really think about, put your things into piles, think about what you want to put back in, and maybe go to the store and pick out a fun new little styling, little accessory that you want to add back in. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about accessories too, a couple slides down. But gosh, yes, changing out your accessories on your shelf, changing out the handles on your bookshelves, adding in an accent table even in your great room with a metal base. That's amazing what those updates will do.
Yeah.
And then thinking about metals in bathrooms, again, we have 3 finishes in here. We have kind of the polished chrome in the faucets. We have the matte black in the handles. And then we have the really pretty aged brass in the sconces and in the mirrors. But the neat thing about this design plan is they chose light sconces that have the black detail also. Mm-hmm. So we are bringing we see this black, this is it really pops against the lighter cabinet, but we also see that balance of the black in the light fixture, which really helps to balance the space. And then that warmth of the gold in the mirrors, we have a richer golden undertone in the cabinet, which really helps to pull everything together.
So pretty.
Isn't it? It's so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so again, how can we utilize this trend? And so if you're still kind of wondering, gosh, I still don't know how to pull mixing metals together. So I think the easiest way, don't feel like you have to go with 3. Again, you just don't want to go over 3 in a space. But for example, in this picture, we have, let me get this here. Yes, so we have an antique brass, and then we have a matte black. So the antique brass always has kind of a darker finish, so it always pairs really nicely with just a matte black. We also have the aged steel, which is slightly different than a matte black. Aged steel is a little bit shinier of a finish, and it's a little bit more of a grayer tone, but it does pair really well with just a natural brass. And the natural brass just doesn't have that aged look to it. But what's neat is this little lamp here has a little speck of that brass tone too. So it's always nice if you're shopping for light fixtures or new hardware, find things that already have things paired with it. I think that's kind of the easiest way to do it. So if I found this light, I fell in love with this light, I know, gosh, I can pull out that brass handle. And then we have the brushed gold, which is a little bit of a lighter gold, paired with the brushed nickel. So this is easy to pair just because we have the same brushed finish. And this is just a little bit of a lighter tone, same thing with the brushed nickel. And we can also look at the chrome, which is the shinier version of the brushed nickel. It's very polished. And then we have the matte bronze, which is just more of the browner undertones rather than the black. Mm-hmm. But they pair really nicely together. So, and any questions on metals? Okay. And then our next trend, number 7, we are talking about olive trees. So we're seeing olive trees all over the place. Olive trees are kind of like the new fiddle leaf fig tree that we've been seeing everywhere. And I'm not saying fiddle leaf figs are out. They are beautiful. We're just seeing a transition into a more sophisticated sage. It's just a little lighter in color, but just a little bit more subtle in a room. It's the fiddle leaf figs have a very dense look where this feels a little bit more bright and airy. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about olive trees is you can find this is a faux olive tree. You can also have a real olive tree actually can live in your home. You just need to make sure it gets a good amount of sunshine. Usually a south-facing window is always best, but if you don't feel like you can have a real one, you can always go faux because they do tend to look very real. And besides incorporating the olive tree, we're also seeing a big trend in oversized organic pottery. So we're seeing these actually paired together, the olive tree inside of a piece of pottery, but we're also seeing pottery displayed by itself. And people are looking for that, again, those rich terracotta tones. They're looking for pieces, even though it's a new piece, they're looking for pieces that looked aged, that it looks like it's a 100-year-old pot. So we're looking for kind of that organic feel. Again, more examples of organic pottery, again, paired with the olive tree. If you are not a fan of the oversized pottery, or maybe you're not a fan of faux trees or a real tree in your home, we can always incorporate this trend. If we like the look of the aged pottery, maybe just bringing in some olive branches. I have an olive tree out in my backyard, and whenever it comes time to trim, it's always nice to kind of bring a few branches in and put them on the kitchen table. They are such a pretty accent piece. If you are not a fan of pottery, but like the look of an olive tree, I always say, and this goes with a fiddle leaf fig tree, any kind of tree, is actually put the vessel or put the tree inside of a large oversized woven basket. Another really easy way to bring in some texture to a space. And then if you don't want to add a tree, they make miniature little olive trees that you could sit up on your kitchen counter or up on a bookshelf just to add a little touch of greenery. And we don't want to forget about the outdoors either. The big oversized pottery is always such a welcoming feature, whether it's off of your front porch, whether it's in your backyard, a really, really pretty feature to add to your yard. All right, and then we move on to number 8, which is vintage accents. And so I was talking a little bit earlier about adding, I'll get to that too, about adding accessories to your shelves. But we're seeing a trend this year, a bigger trend about adding vintage especially vintage artwork back into our homes. And especially actually in the kitchen, we're seeing so many more designers utilizing vintage artwork, whether it's the real thing or whether it's a printed version of that vintage piece of artwork. We're seeing it displayed in kitchens, whether it's on a floating shelf or just resting on the counter. We're going to be seeing that a lot more this year. And not only just in kitchens, we're seeing it in gallery walls. A lot of people are wanting to know, they're putting things in their home that they kind of want to tell a story. They're not wanting to go to a Home Goods and just buying something that you're going to find in everybody's home. They're wanting to have more of a unique piece in their home that maybe if they don't know the story behind it, they know that, gosh, this piece of artwork had a story. This is a great trend for people who love to go thrifting or go to antique stores. This is such a wonderful trend, and it's an easy trend to utilize in your home. And it's not just vintage artwork. We can bring in vintage pieces of furniture or vintage looking pieces of furniture. It doesn't have to be totally 100 years old. A lot of furniture makers are making pieces that look old. And again,
special, Alissa, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was at a client's house and they had a couple things in their home that were like vintage art pieces.
Yes.
And she just did it for style, and it like reminded me of my childhood. It was really like special and kind of cool how just seeing some of those pieces that I probably grew up with in other people's homes or whatnot. Like I remember one of the pieces she had, I'm like, I feel like this was like in my grandma's house.
Aww.
So it's kind of special, I think, to be able to do that. I really like that.
I think that's such a great story. Yes, I think it's so fun to, yes, if you, maybe you have a hand-me-down print from, maybe you were passed on a print from your grandparents, and maybe it's just in a box in your closet. Maybe you can now bring that piece out and show it off in your house. And I think your story goes along with that storyline that we see it and we're like, oh gosh, what's the story behind that print? Yes, it maybe brings back some memories that we had of our grandparents' house. I think that's so wonderful. And again, how can we utilize this trend? Whether it's in an art print, there is actually there's local art print companies. They're actually all online. I'm thinking of one right now. It's called Jenny's Juniper Print Shop. They are an online digital art company that you can go online and shop their digital prints. There's old vintage prints that you buy, and then they email you the file, and you can take that file to either Costco or an Office Max or a Walgreens and have it printed in whatever size you want. And then you frame it on your own and you can hang it in your house. And so I think it's a really easy way, if you don't enjoy going hunting in stores for these vintage prints, to go online and look through their catalog and say, gosh, I really love this print. And when you get it printed, they tell you exactly how to print it, and it looks authentic. It's such a neat way. So yes, whether it's through artwork, maybe you find a special little bench, and we have an updated bathroom here, and then we have a really cool old little stool that's sitting by the tub. We have a cool vintage table sitting by the chair, bringing back serving boards and bread bowls and things that look worn and used. Like it tells a story, but it also has just a warm and inviting feel. All right, and so we go on to number 9, which is canopy beds. So canopy beds are really, really big also. We have, when we think of canopy beds, we kind of think of 70s, 80s, where we have these big, huge, chunky beds with the big frilly curtains hanging down. And we're just wanting to kind of simplify it. It's a much more modern look. And it gives the room a very dramatic presence. And we're seeing a lot of it. I will say that first one was kind of just a metal frame with an upholstered headboard and footboard. We're seeing in the turned wood, painted white, which is such a pretty, I think it's such a pretty presence in the room, especially with the wallpaper background. A nice little peek of those trends put together. And then we're also seeing it in the arched form too. So that kind of brings back the curved trend also. But we can see this canopy bed in all sorts of spaces. And how might we utilize this trend? So this trend might be harder in Arizona homes, just because if we don't have really high ceilings, we always want to make sure we measure before we order a bed, but we have ceiling fans to take account of. And so we want to make sure if you have, they work very well in vaulted rooms, or again, if you have very high ceilings, I think this is a great trend to bring in, especially in kids' rooms. I think if you're looking to kind of spruce up your kids' room, I think a canopy bed would be so fun in their room, especially if they share a room. You can put 2 canopy beds in and kind of have it separated by a little dresser in between. If you want to see if you like this trend before you buy a bed, this is actually a faux canopy bed where they installed curtain rods to the ceiling and dropped some long curtain panels. They're using their original bed, but it gives you the look of a canopy bed. And I think my favorite is the outdoor canopy bed. And so if you're wanting to kind of spruce up your outdoor space, have a little lounging area by the pool, I think a canopy bed by the pool sounds pretty amazing. And lastly, we have high contrast decor. And so high contrast is huge this year. We're seeing, when we think of high contrast, we think of black and white. We think of those tiled black and white floors. And we're seeing more and more of this. We're gonna see this trending in this is huge in magazines. A lot of people, again, going from all white spaces or a muted palette to a really high contrast rooms. And they add a lot of depth. When we work in high contrast, we get a lot of depth and dimension into a room. Again, this is going back to the kitchen where we have the black cabinets, but it's also, this is pulled off really well because we're playing with, we have the white backsplash with the darker black cupboards, but then we kind of soften it up with that light natural wood tone. And we also have really good contrast between the hardware color and the cabinet color. And we can also look at this in a bedroom setting where it's not all black and white. We have a pretty deep olive green wall, but then we have high contrast with the pretty white curtains against the green paint. We have large artwork that has a big white background that plays really well against that dark green wall. Just if you're wanting to spruce up your bedroom, just get a white basic comforter and bring in some fun new throw pillows. It's a great, easy way, if you like the look of high contrast, to make your bedroom feel very inviting and instantly updated. Especially if you go darker on the walls, this will help to instantly lighten the space with a lighter comforter. And then when we think about high contrast, we don't always have to think dark versus light. We can also think about complementary colors. And a complementary color palette is when we look at colors that are across each other on the color wheel. So for example, I pulled orange and blue. When you put 2 complementary colors together, they instantly intensify one another. So if we look at this blue lampshade paired with this vase of orange flowers, they complement each other so well, but they also become more vibrant. And so again, if we're just thinking about how we want to bring in that high contrast, we can do a complementary color scheme. Even if we do a more muted palette where we have kind of a denim blue, and then we bring in a really pretty cognac leather that has the orangey undertones, I think that is such a pretty way to utilize high contrast, but just in a more subtle way. And then lastly, how can we bring this trend into our home? I think one of the easiest ways is thinking about a gallery wall. And in order for a high contrast gallery wall to work, if you have a light background color, so they have a white wall, use a much darker frame. All the frames need to be the same, but also make sure you have a large oversized mat and a smaller picture. That way you get this, it just kind of bounces off the wall and you see those highs and lows between the white and the black. Another way is just to change out your decor, like we were talking about earlier. If you have an all neutral space, think about bringing in pops of color through your accessories. One of my favorite things to do is go thrifting for hardcover books and taking off the cover of the book. Books come in so many beautiful colors, and just display your hardcover books with a pop of color. Change out your throw pillows. If you have a neutral sofa or a dark sofa, use a contrasting color, a contrasting pattern to really bring a space back to life. And again, bringing in little simple elements of black will help for the eye to rest. And again, we have really high contrast between the light carpet, area rug, and then we have the darker table and then the lighter sofa. So it just plays off of each other really well. And then the opposite is true too. If we have a dark background, just make sure you're bringing in lighter accents. And then if you have a dark sofa, we're bringing in high contrast between patterns and color. But don't feel like every single thing in the room has to be high contrast. If you kind of notice in this picture, we have it's kind of a neutral brown area rug and a brown coffee table. So those kind of just fade into the background and our eye immediately goes to that bookshelf wall and that sofa. And so these neutrals help to bring balance back into the space. And then finally, painting your doors black. Interior doors, all black, leave the trim, leave the baseboards white, and just add that black or even a dark charcoal to your doors. Another easy way to bring in that high contrast look. I'm really wanting to try this in my own home. I've been wanting to do it for a couple of years now, actually. Just have to convince my husband.
Me too, Alissa. I'm scared, but I'm like, oh, I have like this one door where I'm like, oh, I would love to do it.
Yes, and that's actually, I was just gonna lead into that. If you have a door, like I actually am gonna try it with my kitchen pantry door. If you have one door, and I say go for it, and I have actually French doors on my office with the glass. I think I might try it on there too, and live with it for a couple weeks. And if you keep going back and saying, oh my gosh, I love this so much, then do the rest of your doors. But I always say start with one and see if you like it. Mm-hmm. But yes, so those are the top 10 trends.
I love it. That was so awesome.
Well,
I love it. That was so wonderful. I want to be super sensitive to time, but we do have some people on our calls. Are there any questions that anyone has? You guys can type them in the chat if you do for Alissa. And Alissa, if anyone has any questions for you, can they reach out to you on your website? Is that okay?
Yes, of course. Yes, my website is on the screen, frontcenterstaging.com. I have a contact form you can fill out, and my phone number is on there too. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Alissa. We appreciate you. We'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.